Well, it's your old buddy Chips O'Toole again. Back to talking about tools. I got my milling machine back up here, well, to my new place. New, 2 years I've been here. It's been 2 weeks. I can't believe it's been 2 weeks, because I thought when I got this thing here and I got my lathe here that I'd be just machining all the time and I'd get right on it. And of course that didn't happen. I was trying to sell a house and relatives came for Christmas and a lot of stuff happened. So I haven't done as much as I wanted to. But now here I am. And I thought I would pass on a little tip that I have a lot of confidence in suddenly, and I'll explain why. Everybody hates tramming a milling machine. You know, you tram the head so it's, lined up perpendicular to the table and along both axes. I mean, it has to be perpendicular this way and also that way. So it's a pain. You have to adjust the, you can't really see it in this picture. I guess I should back up a little. But you have to adjust the nuts on the machine so you can move it. And then what most people do is they'll put an indicator in the spindle here, a dial indicator, and they'll sweep around, and they'll take measurements off the table and they'll try to get them all equal. And it's annoying. It's not much fun. Well, a few years back, I got a set of DVDs by a guy named, I think it's Pendergast, I don't know. He has a set of lathe DVDs called Lathe Learning. This was before there was really a lot of YouTube material, so people were actually willing to pay for DVDs. And he had a set of DVDs for the Bridgeport mill, and this is a Bridgeport clone, it's Chinese and Taiwanese. My understanding is that it's manufactured in Taiwan and assembled in China. I'm not sure which is worse. I guess it's better to be assembled in China than manufactured there. But it's always been great. I've never had a problem with it. So, same thing applies here. Any knee mill, I guess, that has a head that moves like this. What he said was you should take one of these guys, and this is a precision angle plate. They call it a plate. Nothing like a plate, but that's what it's called. Precision angle plate, and the sides are ground precisely parallel to each other and flat and all that. You put it on your table, and then what you do is you look for the gap. You lower your spindle so it rests against this thing, and you look for the gap behind it. And I don't know, maybe you can see it now. It's pretty big. It's like almost 3/16 of an inch down there at the bottom, so it's a little off. So what you do is you rotate your mill until that gap goes away. And what this guy said was, and I think he's right probably, I have no reason to doubt it, he says you can detect a half a thousandth of gap. If it's bigger at the top or at the bottom, by half a thousandth you can tell. So you can get it pretty accurate over 6 inches, which is what the length of this thing is. And, I forgot my pointy object. I don't have anything to point with. Boy, I hate that. Here we go. So, if you think about it, if this thing's out, half an inch over 6 inches, that means when you're milling, let's say you got like a 2-inch fly cutter in there, it's going to be off by, if it's off by, did I say half an inch? I meant to say half of a thousandth. If it's off by half of a thousandth over 6 inches, then down here, vertically, it's going to be off by a sixth of a half of a thousandth. Isn't that right? I believe that's right. So that's not very much, especially with these machines. Really, people love to, they think their machines are more accurate than they really are. This is not the most precise machine on earth. Even if it was a real Bridgeport, it would not be the most precise machine on earth. If you're down to a twelfth, or no, whatever it is, 12 ten-thousandths, or what am I thinking? Well, yeah, I guess it'd be a 1/12 of a thousandth. If you're down to that kind of accuracy, you should be pretty happy. And I've told people about this before, and of course they always made fun of me, even more than usual. But now I have a little bit of authority to back me up. And there's a guy who has a channel called Suburban Tool. He's got a business someplace in the Midwest. I always forget. Seems to know what he's doing. I've never seen anybody criticize him, criticize his knowledge. I mean, he's got a serious business out there. And the other day, he put up a video about tramming a mill, and he was tramming it so that using an indicator, he was within like 5 thousandths way out here, So if you're off by 5 thousandths way out here, that's much worse than being off by half a thousandth down here. You know what I'm saying? And he said, if you get a Bridgeport type mill indicated into within 5 thousandths, he said that's great. And that surprised me because people are always sticklers. You know, say, oh, you got to use a test indicator. You got to get it to within, a hundredth of a millimeter. And people who don't really know what they're doing always have strong opinions. But since I have this guy on my side, I'm willing to say that this is probably correct. The math certainly seems to work. So I'm going to try to line this thing up. And by the way, I've used this thing. One of the ways you test whether a mill is aligned correctly is you use a fly cutter. Fly cutter might be this wide. If it's off, you're only going to have, when you go across something, it's only going to hit on one side, and you're going to end up with a funny pattern when you cut. And I've used a big, like 2-inch face mill, which is like a fly cutter, after doing this, and it worked just fine. So either that was blind luck and geometry is wrong, or this is a good idea. So I'm going to turn this thing off and give it a shot. Well, I am done tightening this thing up along one axis. And of course, you're not at a great angle to see, but if you were at a good angle to see, you would see that there's virtually nothing coming through there. I mean, I might be able to fix it a tiny bit, but as I said, this isn't the greatest machine on the face of the earth. I mean, none of these things are. So I'm going to keep working. I am taking a few seconds before I start speaking because, once again, I've managed to cut off the first few words that I said in the first 2 segments of the video. Sorry about that. I don't know what's with this camera. I've really got to go out and invest in a GoPro. I have to apologize to you for that once again, and I also have to apologize because I destroyed the 3rd segment of the video. This camera has an app that has a little thing over here that says time lapse, which is very easy to hit with your finger, and apparently I hit it when I did the 3rd segment of the video because it shot in time lapse mode, which meant everything was sped up and there was no sound. So it was like watching, Charlie Chaplin or the Keystone Cops. Except without the witty humor. So I have no idea what I said. If you don't mind, I'll try to recap a little bit. What I think I said, in which I may be repeating, I can't tell, was I took this thing and I put it around behind the spindle to tram the mill in this direction, and I found out that it was already in tram. It was already nice and straight. There was no light between this thing and the spindle, and that's because when I moved the mill, I rotated it this way down onto the table, and I didn't have to move it back and forth. So it stayed in tram, so that's nice. It seems like it's ready to go. And I got to tell you, I really recommend this method. I don't understand why everybody doesn't do it. One of the great features of this kind of mill, and I probably said this already, please forgive me, I don't have my video in front of me. One of the great features of this kind of mill is that you can move the head around. And you may have something you need to drill that's at 45 degrees or some other angle. Sometimes it's good to turn the mill to get into some odd angle because you're trying to drill some part out or something. Please forgive me if I mentioned this already, but the guy that made the video in which I found out about this did a machining job where he put an exhaust manifold with a stud that had broken off in it on his mill table, and he couldn't get it lined up straight. So what he did was he took the head of the mill and he turned it so that it was aligned with the stud, and he was able to drill down in there and get it out. So it was fantastic, and it wasn't a precision job, but these things, let's be honest, what is this thing? It's a really big drill press. So the fact that it's capable of precision work doesn't mean everything you do on it has to be precise. You can do woodworking on these things. I've done it. So I hope this is useful to you, and the next time I do this, I'm going to try not to screw up quite so much. Maybe I'll get a GoPro and just man up, or maybe I'll just go back to using the cell phone, which I think actually worked better than this thing. The next thing I'm planning to do, I plan to finish up my arbor press stand, which came out pretty good. So far, it's come out pretty good. Put it on wheels, get the arbor press out of my face, and after that, I don't know, the sky's the limit. So all I can say is God bless you, be patient with me. Maybe one of these days I'll make a video that isn't completely insane.